Hey everybody. Welcome to Higher Ed, Change Higher Ed. Still trying to figure out what I'm going to be calling this thing, but it's been really fun. I'm smiling for several reasons. One of which, I still love my video countdown of my timer. I think it's really fun and it's catchy. And I saw one that did like the stock one the other day. I was like, oh, they're new to StreamYard too. And so I'm moving on in my life and professionally, and that's exciting. The other thing that I'm really excited about is this panel. I think that a lot of people in academia, there's this idea of publish or perish. It's this drive that I think a lot of academics have, is to publish and to get their voice out. And I'm excited to bring in Josh and Ashley to be able to talk about their experiences and the stories that they want to share. They went into children's literature or kids lit, which is something I don't know how to do that at all. But it's really exciting to be able to talk to people who do know what they're doing and who are able to share their stories. And I think one of the reasons why I'm excited about this particular panel is because for me, I think this kind of it embodies in a way a lot of what I've been trying to do. Once I found out that I was unemployed, I was scrambling for my network, and what has blossomed from that is this wonderful initiative that we have going on. And that's how I came to know Ashley and her story. And it's a fantastic story. But then on the other side, we have Josh, who I've known for over a decade now. He's one of my professors in my undergraduate at BYU, Idaho. He was a fun professor. We had a class all about superheroes, and we read about Superman, and it was pretty integral into my thinking, especially Joseph Campbell's stuff that I can't remember about that, but it's in there somewhere. So I'm excited about this panel to be able to share that. Before we go into it, please, as we're talking about it, make sure you check out their books, Out to Get You and My Friend Fresno. You can see it there by Josh and Ashley, respectively. Next week we have an international panel. We have panelists from France and India and Chicago, and I believe California. It's all about how academics should reevaluate and reestablish the value of their time. So often we're expected to work 90 hours a week, 70 hours a week, these ridiculous things. And it's like, because you're passionate about it. But you need to know that you should be compensated for that. You are worth a lot of money, and academics don't know how to value their own time. And so it's going to be a really cool panel about what you can do to frame that and to value it. So I'm excited for that for next week. So please tune in for that. Without further ado, I'm going to invite our panelists onto the screen, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, and we'll kind of get into everything. And if for those of you who are watching now or watching later, please feel free to reach out and connect in ways that you feel would be great. So it just kind of, threw that one away, I think. Anyway, so here we go. Let's, this is Ashley and Josh. Thank you. Oh, and look at that. I switched it. Like I figured out how to do that. And so let's start with Ashley. Like, could you just tell us, introduce yourself, tell us who you are. And then we'll go with Josh, and we'll start with some questions. So please, Ashley.
Hi, guys. I'm Dr. Ashley Wellman. I'm a victimologist and criminologist, and I have my PhD from the University of Florida back in 2011. And since I've been super passionate about research with cold case homicide survivors, the survivors of sexual assault, and working with the surviving victims of violent crime. And so very interesting, because a career where I set off to be very driven with quantitative research and understanding case files and all of these things, it just changed when a mom said, I want to know what the heck happened to my daughter. She was the victim of a murder. And I started bonding with that mother in my graduate program. And then from there, I really said I have this platform to share survivor stories. And we'll find out later that ends up coming full circle into my personal life. But I'm very honored for my past with those survivors and with the incredible students I've been able to serve.
Hi, everybody. I'm Josh, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you, Eric, for the invitation. I am an English professor at Brigham Young University, Idaho. I've been teaching there for 16 years. Before that, I was an English instructor at the American University in Cairo, Egypt, where I lived for 2 years. My second son was born in Egypt, true story, on an island in the middle of the Nile River. So there's a hospital on that island, but still, he was born on an island in the middle of the Nile River. I have an MFA, a Master's of Fine Arts degree in fiction writing from Old Dominion University, and I am the author of this book, Out to Get You, 13 Tales of Weirdness and Woe. So this is 13 creepy short stories for kids. This book cover, I should point out, glows in the dark. So if we could turn off all the lights in here, the book cover would glow. I have a second book coming out next year in August. It's also 13 creepy short stories for kids. It will be titled Only If You Dare, 13 Tales of Darkness and Doom, published by Holiday House. So, and I'm just so happy to be here. And we'll, a little bit later, I think we'll hear more about my story and how I started writing spooky stuff for kids.
Josh, I'm gonna have to take a tip from you. I didn't even share that I'm an author. I'm so used to my old identity, right? I'm the author of The Girl Who Dances with Skeletons, My Friend Fresno. That's why we're here. So I'm taking notes. Next time, this is my cover.
Everything about this is just making my heart so full. And I am the author of my notes.
It's a start. It is a start, Eric.
Maybe one day there'll be something out there. No, but I am. I thought it was very coincidental, serendipitous, whichever word you'd like to use, with this idea that both of you are kind of like went into this this scary skeletons theme, and it was not planned to do that. It was planned. I wanted to do it before Halloween, so to kind of amp that up. So I'm excited for this. So we got into a little bit of your professional backgrounds, and I think that a lot of people can relate to that. I think that there are a lot of people who like Ashley are really just you're into your field, you're into your research, and that's just what you do. And then there's this like creative outlet that you can do, and then especially when you like processing things that we'll talk about. And then on the other hand, like we have Josh, who has kind of like he's gone that route of like, yes, this is what I do. I teach writing, creative writing, and he's a fantastic author, or authors, and I am very much overcome with gratitude that both of you are here, and so thank you for
Same.
that. And your willingness to share that professional background that I think that a lot of people can resonate with. And so what I'm hoping, and one of the reasons why I invited you both here, is to kind of let people understand that there is a path forward. It may be a more traditional path of publishing with a company. It may be doing an incredible amount of PR, which I think is amazing, for doing your own self-publishing, and just how that genre of self-publishing has just been lifted up in the past several years. So I'm excited for you both to share your stories and to let people resonate with the things that you're saying. And so I think that we can kind of start that way. Again, I'm going to give credit to Liz Leiba, who asked me this question in an interview, and I just think it's a great question, and it throws me back to the superhero class that I had with Josh back in the day. But what's your origin story? So if we're thinking about like, here's this book, this thing that you brought out into the world, how did it happen? Like, where did it come from? Let's go ahead. This time, let's start with Josh, and we'll go to Ashley. I'll just jump off the screen and let you all do like some great conversation, and then I'll kind of just come on in when it's time for the next question, or if there's any questions from the audience. If you do have questions, please submit them, and we'll get them answered. So yeah, please, Josh. So
my origin story, I guess I fell in love with stories at a really early age. I don't know, when I can remember loving stories in like 1978 one of the first movies. The first movie I ever remember seeing in the movie theater was Superman, starring Christopher Reeve in 1978. And obviously that spilled over into the superheroes class that I taught Eric. And just fell in love with stories. And then when I got to graduate school, or when I got to college, I decided to major in English because I loved stories so much and I wanted to tell my own stories. And the academic world sort of trained into me a bias for a certain kind of story. The academic world seems to favor, above all else, contemporary literary fiction written for adults, right? That's sort of the gold standard of story. And I kind of bought into that when I was an undergraduate student, and when I was in graduate school. I kind of bought into the idea that if you were going to be a real writer, right, if you were going to contribute anything meaningful to the literary world, you had to write contemporary literary fiction for adults. And so I spent a lot of time trying to write contemporary literary fiction for adults. Never really had much success. Published a handful of stories in literary magazines. Placed second in, I think, 2 different contests or something. And my wife would always say to me, "Why are you trying to write for adults? You don't like very many adults, but you love kids. Why don't you write for kids? I think maybe you should tell stories to kids." And I resisted that for a long time because of this bias, which had kind of been trained into me by the academic world. And then I ended up getting asked, I did not volunteer, I ended up getting asked to be a scoutmaster. My son was in Boy Scouts, and this is not something I ever would have seen myself doing in 1,000 years. But these people came to me and they said, "We need you to help keep children in the woods alive. Would you come to the woods and help keep these children alive?" And I said, "Okay, fine." And I can do that. And I loved hanging out with the kids, but at bedtime, there was one big problem. They would not go to bed when it was time to go to bed. We'd say, "Okay, boys, go get in your tents and go to sleep." And they would go into their tents and they would stay up till like 3 a.m, just talking and talking and talking about, and I would have to lay there in my tent on the other side of the campground and listen as they had these heated debates over like the dumbest things in the world, like who was hotter, Taylor Swift or Selena Gomez. And I'm having to listen to that, and it's just agonizing, right? And one time at scout camp, I thought, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to gather these boys around the fire and I'm going to read them a story before bed. And literature will sort of soothe the savage beast, right? And then they'll go to sleep, and even better, I'll get to sleep. And so gathered the boys around the fire and I read them. I think that first night we did this, I read them the first chapter of The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. It's a fantastic book. So I read them this chapter and I said, "Okay, everybody go to bed." And they said, "Read us another chapter." And so I read them chapter 2. And then I said, "Okay, go to bed." And they said, "Read us another chapter." And I just kept reading to them. And we stayed up till like 3 a.m. anyway, right? But at least I got to stay up till 3 a.m. doing something I wanted to do. And it sort of reminded me that this is why I fell in love with stories. This is the magic of stories. And then at one point, the kids asked me, they said, "Hey, you write. Why don't you write us something? Why don't you read to us one of your stories?" And I thought, gosh, I mean, contemporary literary fiction is what I write, right? I'm a serious writer. I write contemporary literary fiction. But I realized these are really the kind of stories I want to tell. This is the kind of writer I want to be. And so the first story I wrote was about 2 boys named Jacob, one spelled Jacob and one spelled Jakob. And there were 2 boys in my scout troop named Jacob, one spelled Jacob and one spelled Jakob. And I wrote them a story about a monster that ravages these boys, and it's horrifying and spooky. And I finished it and printed it off of my work computer and drove home one day and gave it to them. And I drove to their houses and gave them this creepy story I'd written about them getting haunted by a monster, and they loved it. And then I kept writing more And then the girls in the neighborhood said, hey, how come you only write stories about the boys in our neighborhood getting ravaged by monsters? And I thought, that's a good question. And so I started writing some for the girls in the neighborhood. And I became known as this sort of guy who writes these creepy stories about the kids in the neighborhood. And the kids loved me for it. And the parents still talked to me. And in fact, the very first story in my book is the story about the two boys named Jacob, Jacob, and Jacob, Kob. And I just was kind of reminded through that experience of the power of children's literature, how important it can be. And I guess I sort of found my calling as a writer. And now I write for kids, and I'm never going back. I write for kids now, and that's what I want to do. And you know, writing for adults feels a little bit like preaching to the choir. You're writing for people who already love to read. But when you write for kids, you're trying to get kids who are on the fence about reading to be less on the fence about reading. And so that's one thing I'm trying to do, is trying to help kids who are on the fence about reading become less on the fence about reading. I've talked way too long. Ashley, it's your turn.
No, that's all right. This is amazing.
No, that's awesome.
No.
Yeah. But Ashley,
okay, so amazing. I think you did not talk too long. It was wonderful. So my origin story was not quite as traditional as, you know, I'm an English professor, and I was actually trained the opposite. I was trained creativity had no place in the scholarly world, and that success really was being a tenure track professor, making sure that you're super scholarly, and all that means is publication count. And so I bought into it. I did it. And I started chasing my career in 2011, becoming an assistant professor at the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina. And then I made my way over to the University of Central Missouri in Missouri and got tenure. And correct, success does not equal tenure, but that's what I had been told. And so I sacrificed a lot. We delayed having a child. And then, when I had my tenure track job, we started having children, and we suffered several miscarriages, and I'm getting tenure, but suffering all these miscarriages. And I told my husband, everything I'm fighting for, I'm not happy. So I'm succeeding professionally by what the standard of the institution says is success, but I'm struggling with my own personal happiness and health. And so he was so amazing. He said, then let's move. Let's go somewhere. Well, it's not that easy when you're a tenured professor, and it's also crazy to pick up and leave a tenure track position and a tenured position. But I had had this promise from another institution that if I stepped away from that and started as an instructor, that I would work my way back to this tenure track job and get tenured and all these other things. So I took the risk, because as a family, we had decided happiness was the route. That's in 2018. The day before I start this new position, I hear glass shatter downstairs, and my husband had a pulmonary embolism in our house and passed away in front of my 4-year-old daughter and I. And it was horrific, because in that moment, all of my identities, scholar, wife, all of these things start slipping away from me. And motherhood changes for me, because I'm thrust into being a single mother overnight. And so I really thought that if I could just go back to my career, that I was going to be super happy, that I was going to be able to regain my happiness and provide a life for my daughter, because I am a scholar. And I get back to work, and unfortunately, grief tends to change the world around you and your place in it. And so the promise of that position got taken away. There was a lot of heartache at school that I thought was going to be my kind of healing moment. And so I remember telling a colleague of mine who's a phenomenal friend. I had a lot of great friends at work. I kept begging him, like, if I'm not going to be this tenure track professor, then what am I? Because that's all that I know that I am. And every success in my life has come from being this tenure track professor. And if I'm not that, then what am I? And even that comment caught me off guard of how out of whack my perception of life was. And he let me kind of mope for a while. And then he said, Ashley, you're the one who gets to write your story. You get to write your narrative. And it's up to you to kind of flip the script and regain the power. And so he had seen a picture of my daughter dancing with her posable skeleton. And Reagan has had this posable skeleton, that's my daughter, since she was 2 years old. She's 6 now. And he's been everywhere with us, international trips. He's been, to the movies with us. He goes in the bathtub, all kinds of things. And this dear friend saw her dancing with the skeleton. And he said, that is the creepiest and most beautiful picture that I've ever seen, because Reagan should be super scared of the skeleton. That's what society tells her. And yet she has this friend, Fresno, who's her best friend. And she doesn't see any fear in that. She sees beauty and acceptance and love and fun. And so he said, you should write a children's book. And I'm thinking, yeah, right. For years, I can't remember the last time I was creative. For years, I've been told, reduce the fluff, scholarly articles, write it like this. And my world was changing so radically that I thought, what if right now is the permission to give myself, the ability to recreate who I want to be. I've lost everything that I am. I felt like I had lost the career opportunity path that I was on right then. I had lost my confidence as a mother. I had lost my role as a partner and a wife. And so I said, oh my God, I think I'm going to be a children's book author. I'm going to do this, because I had kissed my husband goodbye and promised him that I was going to make his daughter's life magical. And that's the hardest promise I've ever made in my entire life, because in the midst of grief, I'm sitting there trying to figure out how I can do something creative and powerful. And so I have started this franchise, because My Friend Fresno, The Girl Who Dances with Skeletons, My Friend Fresno is just the first book in this series. And it's really been this amazing adventure to spread the stories of like acceptance and self-love and diversity and inclusion, because Reagan and Fresno are very different. And Reagan tells you in the very beginning of the book, I used to be scared of monsters under my bed, but now I welcome them, because I've learned scary things are often just misunderstood. And the whole book really is about, if you put down your guard and you're willing to fall in love with people or things or a skeleton who's very different than you, then you'll actually find the beauty in that friendship and how our world is better together. And so this book is just, it's actually not scary. I had someone go, oh, this is a great Halloween book. I bet it's really scary. It's the absolute antithesis of being scary. It is about just being kind and loving. And the fact that this little skeleton that used to be mistreated and not accepted finds a friend who not only teaches them to love themselves, but is a vessel to share this story with so many other people. So, I made a promise 2 years ago. I can't believe it's only been 2 years. And I'm on this, path of creating an empire with my daughter as my CEO, my little co-partner. So it's really fun.
Thank you both for sharing those stories. I think that I can relate to both of them in a way that I remember, one, when I was in Scouts, I remember the staying up late, and also my the Scout leader's like yelling. It was like, Eric, just go to bed. I remember one time I just waking up I was really early, and I was chopping wood at 4 o'clock in the morning. I suddenly woke everybody up. But then on the other hand, right. Just this need to tell stories. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why higher ed has kind of taken the direction that it has, is because it's just me sharing my story and where I am. And then with Ashley, just while I haven't had my spouse pass away, there is grief that people experience, and being able to channel it in such a way that you can build something beautiful. And especially, and I love what you said, and I have seen this on your website too. Like your daughter Reagan, right, is like involved. She's like, yeah, like this, like it's like she's there, and she's into it. And so I love how for both of you, it feels like children have been the inspiration for this thing, and really just let's bring some positivity into this, into what's happening. And Josh, I love what you said too about. Like writing for adults is like pandering to your audience. Like, yeah, like you already love to read. Here's a whole lot more for you to read. But to be able to entice a kid to keep on reading, I think that's powerful. And as a parent, just last night, I was up, watching TV. It was like 11:45. And I hear my kid, she's upstairs, like running around. I was like, so I put her down, and I was like, all right, are you having trouble sleeping? Like, what's going on? She's like, no, I haven't gone to bed yet. I was like, why? Like
best.
what's happening? And she's like, oh, I found another story on the app, and like I downloaded another book. And so just to see her, I'm like, well, I'm okay. Like,
Yeah, there's worse problems.
Yeah. And so just being able to see just like the potential, right, of, and like just the fire that can come out with kids, I think is just is a beautiful thing. I wrote down a question I think I'll ask towards the end about things. We'll see how that goes. But you already kind of answered the question that I talked about too, like what kind of like drove you to write this non-academic work? And I think that you both answered that very, very effectively. And so let's kind of like shift into some of like the practical side, like where like Josh, you went with publishing house, and Ashley, you went with self-publication. So like, why did you choose those particular paths? Yeah, like just like what was your reasoning and your thinking behind that? This time, let's go ahead and start with Ashley, and then go on to Josh.
All right. So my background, I actually used to be the community relations manager at Barnes & Noble. So one, had you said, are you going to be a children's book author? I would have laughed. But two, if you had said, are you going to be a self-published author? I would have gone, oh God, no, of course not. Because self-publishing has historically had such a negative rap to what it means, that it's really, okay, you couldn't make it as a published author, and so you had to publish your own book. I think that is true, but I think Josh would agree that if you look at the world of books, there's really great books that are self-published, and there's really bad books that are published with a traditional publisher. But it's one of those things, to me, that was a very personal decision, and it's book specific as well. So I'm writing a teen ghost novel, and for me, that is going to go the traditional route. I don't have the energy, I don't have the personal desire, I don't have the need to maintain it in the way that I wanted to maintain my children's book. And so that when my co-author and I are turning over to a traditional publisher, and we knew that from the start. But for me, my friend Fresno took on this life, and as I was writing it, I thought, I don't want it just to be the book. I wanted a business. And I wanted something that I could say, you know what, when joy is not coming from what used to define me, I want to give myself a new definition. And for me, that was going to be this founder of more than the book, but of this, the My Friend Fresno franchise. And so, coming up with ancillary products and being the person to do the event and the marketing and the pitch to people, I wanted that. I used to be a public relations person. I've always had this kind of knack of being a performer and a people person. And so I also thought that this book was going to give me leverage to go into classrooms and into schools when COVID's done, to start sharing these messages of self-acceptance and love and diversity and inclusion in a classroom setting, so that my passion, because my students have forever been my passion, and working with marginalized groups and disenfranchised individuals, that's always been my passion. So this book lets me do that. So I wanted to maintain the ownership of it. And I got partnered with the most incredible artist, Zachary Thomas Kincaid. It's Thomas Kincaid's nephew. Thomas Kincaid was the painter of light. Zach Kincaid is just this incredible artist. And when I got partnered with him, I remember the first time he sent me his sketch of Fresno and what he had pictured Fresno as. And the love and joy and kindness that came through that picture, we both just kind of fell in love with the book. And I told him, Zach, it's going to get real here. I'm going to publish this on my own. And he thought like, oh my gosh, he kind of bucked that a little bit because he's a rule follower and he didn't know me that well. And I said, Zach, I got this. I'm going to be the voice behind it. I'm going to get endorsements for it. I'm going to connect it to the avenues that it needs to be connected to. And so as I thought about it, I said, I don't want to give this story to somebody else. So I started doing my research. I went to the bookstore constantly, and I was the lone woman sitting in the children's book section, looking through children's books to know what size, what style, what page quality I wanted. And I found the exact type of book I wanted. I noted all of the specifications, and then I start getting online and shopping printers who are going to print my book. And next week, I am about to have a huge truckload or two of products pull up of my book. We have the precious little plush doll that I designed, puzzles, adult puzzles. So I'm building a brand that will be this kind of vehicle for Reagan and I to continue this path together with Zach's amazing artistic ability brought to the scene. And so for me, I think the decision for this book was saying which method gives Ashley Wellman, the children's book author, this new identity. And so for me, that book gave me this kind of direction.
Okay. Yeah, I really appreciate that. Like that the decision was for you to kind of like to reclaim part of that identity.
And I believed in it so much. I was like, this is mine. I want this.
And I hope that everybody's listening for this too, is that the amount of research that went into it. So way to go. Okay. Yeah. Josh, like, please, like, tell us.
Well, I think the first thing I ought to point out here is that Ashley, clearly you are like Superwoman or something, right?
I try.
Listening to you talk about making all of these decisions for your own book, the size of the book, the style of the book, the page quality of the book, all that kind of stuff. I'm sort of over here just like freaking out, right? Because for me, just writing the book, that's like that's enough, right? That's hard enough, challenging enough for me. So I guess for me, I don't have training in public relations like you do. I'm not confident that I can that I can like build a brand and I can get my book out there, right? And so for me, there's a lot of comfort that comes through traditional publishing, knowing that there is a PR and marketing team out there working on my book, and that there's a book designer who's designed like 1,000 books over the course of her career, who's working on my book. That I don't have to do those things is like a relief for me, because I don't have any training in it, right? But you have experience in public relations, so you.
And I'm bossy. And I'm bossy. So my illustrator, same kind of thing. It was like, all right, redo this, do this, and it was.
So it sounds like your kind of history and your personality might be really well suited to self-publishing, where I'm not convinced that my history and my personality are well suited to self-publishing, because I wouldn't know the first thing about, like, okay, I wrote a book. Now what do I do? Right? How do I get it out there? How do I get it turned into a book? And I really appreciate having published traditionally. I really appreciate that there are so many people involved in the production of my book, that my agent read a bunch of drafts and gave me lots of feedback and help. And then Sally Morgridge, my editor at Holiday House, she read draft after draft and gave me feedback and help. And there are so many people involved in the creation of this book. I feel like if I'm going to put something out there, I want it to be the best that I can possibly make it. And maybe I'm kind of an insecure person. And so I like the comfort of being able to at least tell myself, well, you know what? At least my agent liked it enough to sign me. The publishing house liked me enough to sign me. So maybe I'm not the worst writer on the whole entire planet, right? And so I kind of need the comfort, quite frankly. And maybe this is a product of my insecurity, but I kind of need the comfort of the industry.
I think artists in general, I'm a pretty outgoing person, but that doesn't always translate to security and these kinds of feelings of confidence, because I think as an artist, we are so creative, but you put your heart out there every time you share something. So I had a group around me, but God bless, it was friends that were forced over and over again to be exposed to my stuff. But I think artistic things in general, creativity is isolating, kind of self-doubting, and at some point you just have to say, here's my heart and I hope you guys like it. And so I think you're right. It's scary. The whole process is scary.
It's scary. And in a way, the traditional route has kind of given me a little bit of comfort, because I can always kind of point to, well, here are some experts in the industry who believe in me. They believe in my stories and they believe in my work. And on kind of my dark days where I want to pack it all in and delete everything off of my hard drive or throw the manuscript in the fireplace or whatever, I can at least kind of say, well, look, these people believe in me. And that's helped me a lot. Another thing I've really enjoyed about traditional publishing is the reach that my publishing company has that I don't have. Last Halloween, when my book came out, it was available in every Barnes and Noble in the nation. And I'd never be able to do that on my own, right? And I got a review from the Wall Street Journal. They wrote a nice review of my book. And I wouldn't know obviously those things don't happen by accident, right? There's somebody at the publishing house whose job it is to try and make that happen, right? and so I've appreciated that there are those people kind of in my corner. When you publish traditionally, you end up with like, a dozen or more people who are all in your corner rooting for your book and doing as much as they can to help it succeed. And I guess I'm really grateful for that. And so for me, those have been kind of the two big benefits of going the traditional route.
The other thing is that for me, I did it. There's different ways to self-publish too. And so some people do this like print on demand, where if someone orders it, great, and they print that way and they're with a company. Not at all. I'm trying right now to contact a distributor who will share my book, but I have designed, planned it, printed it, house it. I'm the one out there publishing that. So it's crazy because I'm also still working. I teach 5 classes at the institution and I'm homeschooling my daughter. And like, I'm those 12 people on the team. So there are still moments where I want to turn everything in and throw it away. And actually my dearest friend that told me to write, he's the one who has stopped me multiple times from just saying, shut it down. Just shut it down, because I remember I got the proof of my book, which should have been the most incredible moment. And because the coloration was slightly different than what the first proof had looked like, it was still beautiful. But as an artist and a perfectionist, it was different, and I wasn't ready to see that. And so when I opened it up, I literally was like, I'm done. It's terrible. And then about 30 minutes later, after I calmed down, I walked back in and I said, it's actually really beautiful, isn't it? And I was, crying. And he's like, it's amazing. But there are those moments of doubt of like, what am I doing? Because I funded it. And I'm creating a business with the book as one of the main items. And so there's this fear and people saying, Ashley, you're a single mom, and I don't know, what if it doesn't work? And so in my head, I've had to say it already worked. I made this investment in myself and in my daughter's future, and it's already worked. She is forever a children's book character in a children's book, and it's the first of several. And so it isn't about failure. It's about how much and how much I can and how much I'm willing to do for it. And so I think finances dictate a lot too of which path you want to take. And then, like you said, personality and those types of things, time. I pretend like I'm Wonder Woman, but my cape gets really wrinkled sometimes because it's exhausting. But again, the days that it's good, or the days that I make a single sale, or someone reaches out and says, I'm smiling today, like I just saw the book, it's worth every moment of it. And so I think it kind of is that personal, what do I want? What do I need? And what do I know or I'm willing to learn? So my poor internet's that's why I jumped off a minute ago. My internet stinks because I'm just constantly on and trying to research and figure out what the next steps are.
Okay. Thank you so much for those perspectives. And I think that what I loved about this conversation going so far is like, I feel like there's always been this clash between like publishing and self-publishing. But especially like over the past few years, and just like, I feel like when you come to the people level, that it just becomes much more of a community, and it becomes much more of a singular decision rather than this is what everybody else should do. Like it's, you have to ask like what is going on in my life and what can I handle right now? And apparently Ashley can handle everything right now.
I already had a nervous breakdown today. It's fine. It's fine. I have a therapist. It's all good.
It's important to have all sorts of support systems. No, it's true. So we have a question from somebody in the audience that I think that is pretty poignant given the conversation right here. So this one is from Audrey Scranton. Thank you for watching. But thank you both so much for sharing your stories. Can you speak to how you find the pitch, or how to find and pitch and choose a publishing house? And it's very competitive. And just to add the self-publishing element too, like Ashley, if you could talk about like the idea of like getting your book out there, like to like distributors and
Sure.
some of the things that are kind of coming off of that. So how about Josh? Can we start with you this time and we'll go from there?
Sure. So there's this old adage in publishing that if you were to go into a library, there are as many paths to publication as there are books in that library, right? Every author's story is kind of unique. And so the way I kind of got to publication was I joined an organization called SCBWI, the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. And I started attending events and conferences. Once I became committed to the idea that I wanted to write for kids, I started going to these SCBWI events, and I started attending as many conferences as I could and trying to learn as much about the industry as I could and to hone my craft as much as I could. I studied creative writing in graduate school, but I believe you can always hone your craft. You can always sharpen your skills and become a stronger writer. So I was trying to do those things, and I ended up sending one of my creepy stories to a national magazine called Cricket. Some people listening may have heard of Cricket magazine. It's famous in dentist office waiting rooms across the land, right? That's where I think Cricket is most popular. And I sent Cricket a creepy story for a Halloween issue they were putting together, and they agreed to publish it. And I was really excited about this. And in my associations with other writers at conferences and other events, I came to be friends with a writer named Gary Schmidt, who has he's won the Newbery Honor twice for Lizzie Bright and the Buckminster Boy, a book some of you may have heard of, and The Wednesday Wars, which is a book you may have heard of. He's written a book called Okay for Now, Orbiting Jupiter. He's just a stunningly good writer and an amazingly nice guy. I sent him an email one day and said, Gary, I'm so excited. I just placed a story in Cricket magazine, and he replied and said, that's fantastic. If you're publishing in Cricket, maybe it's time for you to meet an agent friend of mine. And so Gary connected me to a friend of his named Rick Margolis, who is a fantastic agent. And I sent him my manuscript, and he thankfully read it and liked it enough that he said he wanted to be my agent. And so then Rick and I edited the manuscript together for about 4 to 6 months. We spent working on it, and then he started sending it to publishing houses. And within this, it never happens this fast. This is so fast for the industry. Within 2 months, we had our first offer on the manuscript. So 2 months after he started sending it out, we had an offer. I actually got the offer in my email while I was teaching class. I was teaching a creative writing class, and I had my students doing an exercise, and I saw an email from my agent pop up while I was teaching. And so my students were doing this writing exercise. So I just sneakily clicked it really quick to see what my agent said. And he said, you've received an offer on your book. And I started crying in the middle of class like a goober, right? And then I had to tell my students what was going on. And I told my students, and then I got to the bottom of the email and it said, please keep this offer strictly confidential. And then I had to swear all of my students to secrecy. And then I cried again. And it was quite the day. So
that's so good. That's so good. It's confidential. It's, just between all 50 of us.
Yeah, exactly.
For me, it's been much more, I'm like I don't know. I'm trying to be as loud as I can where people will not ignore me. And so it's been a lot of networking, like Josh said, but also for me, it's reaching out to people and saying, hey, this is our story. Will you support our mission? This is what we want to do and be. Does your store want to carry it? So for me, it's not necessarily just the big box bookstores. It's children's boutiques, and it's education, teacher stores, and it's getting out and really expanding who I am as a scholar too, because I just gave a talk last week about how do we empower our children and make sure that they feel included and accepted in their classroom community. I'm a criminologist. All I know is as a mother who's advocated for her own daughter, how to do that. And so as part of that, I said, oh, don't worry. I have this book that's going to be the launch point for you guys to be able to have these conversations, whether you're a therapist or an elementary educator, and you're going to use this book during Red Ribbon Week or back to school. And so again, it's that now I'm at the stage where my books are on a ship right this second, coming into the United States, and they're about to be at my doorstep. So I'm on fire right now trying to say, what bricks can I lay and what pokers can I put in the fire to try to get people to need to be part of our story and our brand? And so it's really just advocating for the story like I would advocate for anything else that I'm doing. It's very much like trying to place merchandise and getting really creative. For me, it's been learning virtual events. We just had Fresno's 4th birthday party online. And so doing this and realizing that it's going to be a different pace than what Josh might have experienced. I just sent an email to Barnes and Noble trying to see, would they be willing to help me, distribute the book through the big box bookstores. And so again, no one responds. So Josh, if you know somebody, let me know. But you have to, if you're a self-published author, you have to be able to place yourself with a distributor to get into those stores. And so for now, I'm saying, cool, I'm not in that store yet. That's okay, because this is not a sprint. This is a marathon, and it could be a marathon for the next several years of my life. And so right now I'm saying I can get into vendor events. I can get into elementary schools. I can get into story times and these different kinds of things. And so I'm doing this small scale of what I can control while still throwing out more of the national aspects, trying to get celebrity endorsements. If any celebrities are watching, let me know. I got a real cute children's book for you. But that kind of avenue. And I'm so blessed because Zach and his family, they have a huge social media following. I have very actively tried to grow my social media following. So that's been a job too, the social media component. And so I'm just throwing it all out there. And eventually, like I said, if you're loud enough, people listen. I just told a student today, she said, I want to get this internship in DC, but I don't know if I'm going to get it. And I said, well, you better be calling everybody you know and cold calling everybody else, because the people who don't stay quiet catch, the things that they're going after. And so you just got to keep trying.
Okay. I think that too, like to say that you've been like scrapping together the social media presence. I just checked. You have, I think it's upwards of like 11,000 followers for your book. I mean, like that's pretty
Please
good.
buy it.
Right?
I hope they buy it.
Right. Yeah. And Josh, like, you won an award, right? Like what, Josh, like what was the thing that you won for your book? Right?
It was selected for the Junior Library Guild, and it was put on a list. So every year, the International Literacy Association and the Children's Book Council, they ask like 12,500 kids to read just a load of books. And then these kids vote on their favorites. And then the International Literacy Association and the Children's Book Council, they whittle them down to the top 30 for each age range. And my book was one of the top 30 voted on by kids for the 5th, 6th grade age range, which is a real honor.
So
when
cool.
critics like your book, it's really nice. But when kids like your book, I mean, that hits you where you live.
The smiles. Have you ever read it out loud, Josh? I'd like a reading or anything. Oh my gosh. I love when people laugh, or they say like, that's my favorite part, or they read with me. My world has changed.
And one really beautiful thing I think about the Kidlit community is that we recognize that, whether you're publishing traditionally or whether you're self-publishing, we are all in this because we are trying to help the world's kids. It's a really scary time to be a kid.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of the adults in your life are angry, right? They're angry at each other. They're angry at the television. They're angry at the president. And maybe in 2020, we don't do a very good job hiding our anger from our children. Maybe we did in 1950. Maybe we never did. I don't know.
No, they didn't.
We don't.
You're stabbing me in the heart right now.
We don't always. It's a scary time to be a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that authors in the Kidlit community, we're all, regardless of what we write, regardless of how we get it out there, we are all committed to healing and educating and serving the world's kids. And that's what we're mostly committed to. And so it's a community that I adore being a part of it, because it's chock full of caring, compassionate, decent people.
And it's crazy what a book, the power of a story, can do. Because I remember I wrote mine without the intention of really being about grief. but I'll talk to a certain group and they'll say, oh my gosh, that's what we needed for our grief journey. Because I wrote it for Reagan to have like a reason to smile, and for me to have it started as a way to heal. But then when my career kind of took a turn, it was like, well, maybe this is a way to thrive as well. And so the book really just started as this passion project. And then I read it to a group for intellectually disabled children, and parents say, oh my goodness, Reagan is the support sibling helping their disabled sibling get through and understand that they're super special, you know. And then I read it to a child, a group of minority children, right, and colored children, and they love it, right? So, and they say, oh, that's me, and this is my friend who's different, and we celebrate that. Even like we said, different things are not scary. They're just misunderstood. And so I talked to Reagan, and my goal for Reagan's personal life is that if someone's different, you're going to get to know them. I love it. I love exposing her to people who don't look like us, that don't talk like us, that don't think like us, and letting her know that there's beauty and richness in celebrating that human. And then it doesn't threaten anything about who you are. It makes you better and more, more well-rounded and a more beautiful human too. And so it is crazy because, Josh, you write scary stories, but I know that children interpret them differently, or they see themselves in different characters. And so that's what I wanted. Everyone can be Fresno. Everybody can be Reagan. And it kind of depends on your life story of how a simple story can prompt a conversation within a family or between mom and dad or anything like that. It's magic.
Okay. This is magic. Like, I honestly, this panel is turning out so much better than I imagined. And so this is very exciting for me. And so the next question that we have, now that we're winding down the conversation, and again, thank you so much for both of you for being here. I really appreciate the time, especially when, clearly, a lot of stuff going on in your lives. So the next question that I have, just to show that we were all on the same route with our audience. The question I had was advice looking for others to publish. And we have this first question from Liz Lowham. Can you guys speak to what do you do to stay motivated when self-doubt hits? So Josh, like you talked about, I'm just going to throw everything, I'm just going to delete everything off my hard drive. Ashley, I don't care. There's a million books coming to my house right now. Take them away. What do you do? How do you overcome that self-doubt? And I think this is something that I can relate to as well. As someone who's constantly just on the grind, looking for a job, in this moment. What are some of the things that you have done to stay motivated? And I think this might take us to the end of our discussion. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. We'll
starting with me.
Sure.
So when my book first came out, it came out in September of 2019. I visited about 40 different schools to talk to kids about creativity and storytelling. And one school, I was signing books during parent-teacher conference. And at the end of parent-teacher conference, it ended at 8 o'clock or something. All these kids, I'd done an assembly at the school that day. And then at parent-teacher conference, all the kids were coming to meet me and get me to sign books for them. And it was just a blast. And at the end of the day, I loaded all my stuff into my car, and I needed to drive for 4 hours to get home. So I wasn't going to get home till after midnight. And before I started my drive, I went to the bathroom. And as I walked out of the bathroom, there was this little girl sitting on the floor by where I had been signing books, and she was weeping because she had missed me. Right? She took her parents. She was there with her mom to buy my book, and she was sitting. She thought I was gone, and she was sitting there on the floor weeping. And as I walked out of the bathroom, I just looked over and I saw this girl crying on the floor, and she tugged her mom's pant leg and said, "Mom, that's him." And this mother walked up to me and said, I know we missed you and I know we're late, but is there any way my daughter could get a book? And I said, of course she can get a book. Come on out. They're in my car, coming out to the parking lot. So we walked out to the parking lot, and I signed a book for this girl, and I asked her name and what she liked to do. And she told me she liked to ride her bike and that she liked to dance. And I signed a book for her, and I gave it to her. And she wrapped it. As she walked away, she wrapped this book around her chest, and she was so happy. And she was bouncing back to her car with her mom. And she looked up at her mom and said, "Mom, when we get home, can we read it together right now?" And I just died, right? I mean, I just died in that parking lot. And so the way I overcome self-doubt is I remind myself, Josh, this is not about you. This is about kids, right? This is about kids who want to read stories with their moms and their dads. This is about helping kids learn how to be brave, how to learn how to deal with fear in literature so that they can learn how to deal with fear in life. And whenever I want to toss it all in the fire or delete everything, what centers me is reminding myself that this is about kids, not about me. So shut up and get to work. Anyway, what about you, Ashley?
Same thing. I was going to say it's a bigger picture. So here's my honest answer, and then here's my philosophical answer. My honest answer is I get really upset with myself. I cry. I throw a little bit of a pity party. And then usually my 6-year-old says something that's as wise as something a 45-year-old would tell me. It's like clockwork. So I'll be crying about something and she'll say, "Mama, don't be upset about the book," or "Don't be upset because you messed up on X, Y, and Z. You're perfect. It's so good because you did it. You're doing your very best." She'll say all these amazing, "I'm so proud of you, Mom. Don't cry. You should be very proud of yourself. A lot of people wouldn't write a book." She'll say these just amazing things. So the reality is sometimes I need a good swift kick in the pants. And if Reagan's not there to do it, then a dear friend is. So I do a lot of phone calls to people that love me. They let me vent and then they set me straight. So that's the honest answer. The more philosophical answer is exactly what Josh said, is that, there's a reason you're doing this. For me, it starts more personal. I made a promise in 2018 to do something magical, and right this second, that's this book. And so giving myself grace and starting to reposition the way I think about things, like what is success and what is failure. That's been one of my biggest things to reposition. What is I used to say I should be doing the following things, because as a self-publisher, I have Post-it notes and bulletin boards and lists and all kinds of things of what I want to be doing. And I will always say, like, "Oh, I should have done this today. Oh, I should have done this." And it's repositioning, like, "Oh, you could have done that today, but you didn't." And being grateful for the things you did get to accomplish. So it's been learning a lot of grace and growth, and knowing that if you're going to do it on your own, the mistakes do happen. Just today, I wrote the wrong name in an email that was very important. And I thought, "Oh no, I blew it. And I'm going, "Stop, Ash. One, you're human. You didn't mean to. You try to fix it. And if it results in a partnership, that's great. If it doesn't, then you keep fighting for the next one." And so I think it's saying it's okay to struggle and get defeated, as long as you're willing to always pick yourself back up and say, "Okay, now that your pity party's over," because we need them, to push it down is not going to do any good. Sometimes you just got to get it out there. And then once that's done, you say, "All right, it's a new start. I'm willing to step out again and try again." And it's just a repeated process. So I would say grace, kindness to yourself, and remembering that bigger picture.
Okay. And I think that those are valid reasons for a lot of situations too, that people can relate to. Just really being kind to yourself, I think, is really important.
It's hard. That's the hardest. I think that's the hardest lesson in life.
Like giving yourself permission to just kind of like sit in the suck, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's just the worst right now, but things get better. Like as frustrating as that adage is, it's
true. And whether you like it or not, life's going on. So you can either jump on with it or you can stay back.
Okay. Again, thank you so much, both of you, Ashley and
Eric.
Josh.
Can we tell people where to find our books?
Yes. Yeah, that's where I was going to go.
Yes.
Yeah. So please tell us where they can get books and all that kind of things, and then we'll close it out. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. I just didn't want to forget that the last talk I did, I was like, "Thank you," and I got up and I went, "Oh no, self-published author's got to promote herself. So, the girl who dances with skeletons, my friend Fresno, you can come to our bone boutique on our website. It's www.myfriendfresno.com. And on the website right now, you can jump in and get the book. You can get an ebook if you're super eager or you're international. There's children's book puzzles, adult puzzles, and there's the adorable little plush doll that's a must. You can bundle and save. There's a lot of fun things there. But if you just want to follow our journey, I'd love to have you do that too. We're on all the social media platforms, including TikTok, which has been a learning process. But we are at My Friend Fresno. We'd love to have you follow that journey. I do try to include my daughter and, of course, Fresno in so many of those posts. And then you can follow me at Dr. Ashley Wellman on Twitter or on Instagram.
Awesome. And Josh, where can people find your book?
So the book's available pretty much wherever books are sold. You can get it at Barnes & Noble. You can get it off of Amazon. You can get it hopefully at a local independent bookstore. If you can order it through one of those, that's sort of preferable, I think. But pretty much wherever books are sold. You can follow me on Twitter at JustJoshAllen. I'm not very good at social media, but I'm working on that. I'm trying to get better at social media. So,
okay. Again, thank you so much for being here, and for sharing your wisdom and for sharing your stories about your stories. I found I was empowered, in a lot of things that you were saying, and so I appreciate that. And I hope that others were as well. So I'll wave to you. Like, thank you so much for being here. And I'm learning how to do this like in a not awkward way, but it's just every time it's just like, I'll see you guys later.
Well, thanks everybody so much. Don't ever be afraid to dance with skeletons, right? Your differences make you special.
Yeah. Awesome.
Ashley, it was a pleasure to meet you and be on the panel with you.
Josh, it was so great. Yes. Right. Congratulations on your success. Bye guys.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. I feel like that hit with me in ways that I was not anticipating, especially the moment of hiding our anger in front of our kids. That's something that I struggle with, but also letting my kids see my vulnerability, which I think is important to do. Just to kind of share the story that I had, like for those of you who have young people in your lives, talk to them like in a real way. The story that I'll close with, I wrote about this on LinkedIn a little bit, that my 6-year-old was so frustrated because she had to write 2 sentences for homework. She had to write 2 sentences, and she was just getting really frustrated, really angry, and really mad. And I was reciprocating that and getting frustrated. And I just had to take a minute and realize, and it was just this really sobering moment that I saw all of my anxieties manifesting in my kid, like right there. And so I said, like, okay, it's like, Claire, what's the first thing that you need to do when you write? And she said, you need capital letters. And I was like, yes, capital letters are great. But before that, you need a pen and paper. You need the actual things that you need to write. And then afterwards, she was staring at the blank page, and she said, I don't know what to write. And I said, before you can write, you have to think. Let's think through this. And then she finished it, and she finished it with a smile and happy, having a lot of fun with her sentences. And she said to me, she's like, Dad, I am really glad that you're a writing teacher. And that was it hit me hard in that moment. And it was exactly what I needed to hear from my kid. And so I really applaud what both Josh and Ashley have done, being able to tap their passion in a way to connect to kids, because we've got to understand that's a reciprocal relationship, and there's a lot of cool stuff that can happen. And so for all of those, for all of you who who are here still hanging out with me, thank you so much for watching and listening for a moment when I do strip this down to a podcast eventually. Thank you for being here, and please connect with us and make your community stronger, because that's what we all need right now. So thank you so much, everybody.